I love the title, Un dîner presque parfait. It's very French. It's not perfect, nearly perfect. I finished university. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just at home, and my mother was a teacher. She came home one day and I'd finished all the milk. And she said, "You are a selfish, useless person. You go and work, do something." And I looked in the newspaper, and the first job that I saw was a job at the BBC. My very first job in TV was cutting up newspapers and sticking date labels on them so that people researching stories could come and look through the files. My career in television started in news, so I did regional news and I did the features side of regional news. And then as I became more experienced, I realised I'm a very impatient person. So some people want to make beautiful documentaries, they take 3 years to create something perfect. I like fast turnover, and so format's perfect for me because you keep doing the next one, the next one, the next one. There are two very important sides to television production. There's being able to make things beautifully, and there's being able to come up with ideas for the shows which should be on television. And when you're young in your career, often you're involved in making things. The more senior you get, the more you need to be a salesperson. You need to be able to get commissions, and you need to be able to build work for your company. And so we were all encouraged to be coming up with ideas and putting in suggestions for programs, and that was something that I was good at. Anybody can do it. I don't think you have to have worked in television for a long time to be able to come up with a great format, but you do have to be mischievous, perhaps. You have to like testing people. Coming up with single program ideas is one skill. To be a format creator, it's more about thinking of a game and thinking of a structure which will be able to repeat and hopefully sell to other countries. And I like games. I like competition. I like putting people into difficult situations. For me, a factual format, it needs some factual in it. So it needs to have something in the real world, and then for that to be upscaled with a little bit of entertainment gloss. With formats, there's a spectrum. So you have very tight formats, game shows, and very loose formats, which are more documentaries with a very light structure that television has imposed. So I would say Wife Swap is quite a light format. So Wife Swap is almost a documentary, but it has a structure on top of it. A game show, all the steps are very clearly marked out. My area of speciality, the area I like, is in the middle, where the structure is very clear, but there is room for unexpected things to happen, and the person who is directing the program, who's making the program, they can tell a story. You have a good structure, but you can tell a story about somebody who is very anxious, somebody who's overconfident. You can bring out things about people's personalities. So that's for me, those are the factual entertainment formats which work best. If you are a format creator, that means that the work has been done, a lot of the work has been done before the shoot. If you are making a documentary with no format, everything is done on the shoot and in the edit. I think about it as it's important for a less experienced producer to be able to make the show. So a less experienced producer can follow a map of where they need to go. A really experienced producer can also make the show, and they might make it more nuanced or more classy, But both people can make that show because there's a map of where you start and where you finish. And that means that often you can make the shows more cheaply because you can make them in a day or in 2 days, whatever the format is, and you don't have to have a really expensive documentary director to make them. If you do, great, but you can also use less experienced people. Good formats do have a lot of rules. So The Apprentice looks very loose, but actually they have, somebody told me, 53 points on the map that you have to hit. Sometimes it's just a shot of a foot coming out of a taxi. Sometimes it's an aerial shot. It's important that the show becomes very familiar. And then it can be different every time, but the basic structure is very familiar. If you want to be a format development person, it is hundreds of formats. And some of them are fantastic and they all get rejected. You just have to be incredibly resilient and persistent. And also the idea that you love the most, you just keep going, and one day, finally, you find the right commissioner and they understand your vision and then they say yes. I think I'm pretty good at being a host. And then one day, my cousin, who's quite grand, and her husband came for dinner with 2 other people, and I was in a rush, and I'm not a fantastic cook, and I made couscous, and the couscous was solid. And my cousin's husband, he put his fork in, he lifted it up, and he said, "What actually is this?" And it all was really a disaster. And afterwards, my husband sat down and he said, "The worst dinner party ever, I'm giving it a 3. And I suddenly thought, there's something funny in the idea that you could give someone a mark out of 10 for their hosting skills. And so that was just the little beginning of the thought.
Grab a basket.
Take 3 former Come Dine With Me champions. Tasked with 3 cunning culinary challenges.
I just hope you don't poison them.
To be honest, I am frightened.
That to me tastes very much like, without being rude, a tin of mushroom soup.
Throw in some secret scoring.
I am scoring him a 7.
Before a judgment from a Michelin-starred chef.
I couldn't really distinguish the custard.
Initially, the idea was at lunchtime, when I first had the idea. And it was mainly women, not all women, but women going to each other's homes and being very house-proud and wanting to impress their friends. And then I took it to a commissioner, and he said, "I want it to be more general. Actually, everybody has had the experience of welcoming people to their home, and I want to have an old person, a younger person, and turn it into this mix." So the idea evolved, and of course much better for having that big mix of personalities. And the commissioner wanted a show that would be stripped every day. And so this was a perfect show for him. It's a programme which does well on repeats. So that helps to make it a very commercial product. It was never the original intention to make a show which had a commercial goal, but that has turned out to be the case.
Oh, for heaven's sake. That's horrible, isn't it? I mean, that is filthy.
This is Come Dine, Champion of Champions.
It's time for a little dance.
I like to think that the original thing about the idea was that low-cost factual entertainment hadn't really been done, not in that way. And it was the starting point for lots of other shows, which are fantastic shows, where people compete against each other in a slightly domestic setting. We have Four in a Bed, which is people who have little hotels compete against each other. Four Weddings, people doing weddings compete against each other. So it was the start of a growth area for that sort of TV. I think that real people are fantastic on television. They are funny and surprising and often very wise. And so Come Dine With Me, most of the programs feature ordinary people, and those people are fantastic. So there's a good supply, and it means that it can go on and on. Because you have an ensemble cast, so that also means you always have enough energy to keep the programme going. It's a challenge that everybody could take part in. So we all think maybe we could host the perfect dinner. It's a challenge which produces unexpected results. So the TV company doesn't feel like it's totally in control, and I think the audience likes that. And I think, importantly, people who are a bit pleased with themselves, so people who think they are great, often it all goes wrong. And there's something very reassuring for all of us that the confident people don't always win. On Come Dine With Me or in dîner, presque, parfait, it's not the rich people who win necessarily, and sometimes it's not the best cooks who win. There is something about the warmth of your welcome which is above money or class or education, and that I like about it, and I think that's one of the reasons for its success. Anybody could win the competition.